Good morning. It's Easter, a time when Christians around the world remember the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. A time, I suppose you might say, that is quite somber, a time for reflection, but also a time for celebration as we remember the hope that we have in Christ. And of course, it is a somber time all around the world as well. As many countries are in lockdown, we in New Zealand here are at around about 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks in lockdown, and we are reconsidering how life is to be lived. We are reconsidering the importance of things in life, how to redo life and what that might look like in the weeks and the months ahead. I've noticed something quite interesting in the last week or so in the media here in New Zealand. Many psychologists, many professionals giving us their perspective on mental health, how we might indeed get through this time. And something that I thought was quite helpful was one psychologist mentioned he thinks we should be framing this time as in being in a cocoon and being a warm bubble where we can be safe. You think of butterflies and chrysalises and the new life that is created as they are in that chrysalis. And it made me think about Easter. It made me think about Jesus being in the tomb for 3 days and rising to life again. Just last week I was sharing with my children during their children's Sunday school time, and we read from the book of Matthew in the Bible, Matthew chapter 26, starting at verse 36, where it says, "Then Jesus went to his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, 'Sit here for a while I go over here to pray.' He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And then he said to them, 'My soul is overwhelmed to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.' Going a little farther, he fell to his face to the ground, and he prayed, 'My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will.'" And the point that we brought across in that particular study last week was not my will, but your will. Jesus being prepared to do the will of his Father over and above his own will. Many Christians around the world take time out at Easter to give things up, the time of Lent. They may give up coffee, they may give up television, they may give up meat for a period of time. But then as Easter progresses, the death is remembered, the tomb is remembered, and the new life comes again on the 3rd day. We are again able to celebrate by enjoying some of these things again. And it is a little bit, isn't it, as if we're having to give up many things in this time of COVID-19, this situation where we are in lockdown. The world is not as it was. It is being reinvented, it's being reimagined. We can't just go out with those freedoms that we had anticipated having just a few weeks ago. And so we're reconsidering how to do life. At OMF we are doing that as well. We are reconsidering how we do mission. We are using many more online platforms now for discipleship groups, for meetings, for preaching, and we are not really sure how that's going to look in the weeks and the months ahead. But we continue to have hope in Christ, hope that he will bring us through this. As Christians, we believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross. He was buried in a tomb. 3 days later, he rose again to new life. And I'll just read a section for you again from Matthew 28, about the resurrection that comes after the time in the tomb, after being in that cocoon, if you like, that psychologists have been talking about. Matthew 28, verses 1 through 10. "After the Sabbath, at dawn on the 1st day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went down to the tomb where Jesus lay. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook, and they became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, 'Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead. He's going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. I have told you this.' And the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy. They ran to tell the disciples. And then Jesus met them. He had risen. Greetings, he said. They came to him. They clasped his feet and they worshipped him. Jesus rose from the dead. He came back to life. They saw him again in the flesh. As Christians, we believe in new light and new life. We believe in hope in Christ. I was just reading from Colossians last night too, Colossians 1:27 I think it is. Jesus Christ, the hope of glory in us. The hope of glory, the hope of glorious things to come. Yes, this time is difficult. Yes, organisations, individuals, families are struggling with how to get through this time. But maybe, as psychologists have been suggesting, we should see this time as a time of cocooning, a time of perhaps being like Jesus in the tomb, from whence new life came. How are we reimagining life after this? Will we be spending more time with our families? Will we be doing work in different ways? What are our priorities? I do like to suggest that you might like to consider having hope in Christ. Jesus Christ, the hope of glory in us, the hope of glorious things to come, the hope of the revelation of his holiness and his goodness. Life as a Christian is not easy, but we do continue to hope in Christ. Jesus Christ, the hope of glory in us. May Christ be with you this Easter time as you consider some of these things, and we look forward to seeing you on the other side.